Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Rob Theriault for robtheriault.com. Excited to be here today. Today is May 11th. It's a Monday afternoon, 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. Good day in the markets today. Really excited about our guest today. I was chatting with him earlier. He's got a really neat background. He's worked directly into pandemic and pandemic-related activity. He's worked as an advisor to the World Health Organization. He is a virologist. He just told me 5 minutes ago that he can test me for COVID if I want to, because I coughed once. So he wanted to let me know that he could test me for COVID. Really neat guy. I've known of him. You know, they have a pretty successful Manitoba story. And I know that they were planning on going public this year. It is a large company that was planning on going public. They've raised a lot of money here in Winnipeg. I am excited to get him out in Winnipeg and in Canada. I'm excited to have him on the show. I'll bring him out here briefly. But first, before we do that, let's run the disclaimer. All right. Again, I'm Rob Theriault from robtheriault.com, portfolio manager at Canaccord Genuity Wealth Management and at the Theriault Wealth Advisory Group. Today, the markets finished up a little bit. I'll give you just a quick update. The Canadian markets were up about 150 points. Last I checked, the Dow was down about 150. NASDAQ just keeps making new highs, so it's rallying. It's up again. So we've had some really good positive momentum lately. I think 6 of the last 7 weeks were positive on the markets as a whole, and we're starting off this week again in positive territory. I will bring in our guest right now. Let's bring him in. Is he there? I will introduce him again, but he is Dr. Stephen Theriault, President, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Science Officer at Cytophage. A lot of letters there behind your name. Doctorates, Masters, B Science. Welcome, Dr. Theriault.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, great to have you here. So, Cytophage. First of all, before I get to Cytophage, where are you now? You're in your lab there, home/lab.
Yeah, lab/garage right now, just because we're doing some renovations in the lab. So we put in a new floor, and then we're getting a bit more equipment so we can start doing experiments here rather than staying at the lab in Henlow Bay in Winnipeg.
Nice. Winnipeg, sunny Winnipeg, Manitoba, although it was kind of freezing on the weekend. I'm excited to have you, a virologist, on the show, not just because you're a virologist and you can test me for COVID if I wanted to, but also just because of the background of work that you've done, that I think you could shed a ton of light on this pandemic, on what's happening globally. And if we have some questions from viewers, I'd love for them to share. Tell me a bit about Cytophage. First of all, I know it's a deeper story than just a quick explanation, but maybe you could tell me how you started, or how Cytophage started, how long ago it started?
Sure. So I've been working on the idea for Cytophage for about 10 years. And first off, what Cytophage is basically a bacteriophage company or a biotech company. Now, bacteriophages are viruses that only infect bacteria. They don't infect any other type of organism. So they're a great solution to curing our problem with antibiotics. So currently we use antibiotics to get rid of bacteria. Bacteriophage are a similar process, although they're biologic, so they're live. There's been lots of work done on bacteriophages, but we've come up with a unique technique and technology that allows us to create these bacteriophages so they specifically attach to bacteria that we want them to attach to. So it's kind of a cool system.
And you created that? Is that like a patented process or something? You own that?
Yep, I do. Yeah, the patents are going through actually in June. That's the last sort of range for them, or the round of reviews that they have to go through. So they'll be done in June, and then the technology will be fully patented. And we'll have a technology where if you come to me with a bacterial infection, I can create you a bacteriophage for that infection.
And the bacteriophage attacks
just that bacteria.
That one bacteria. So it's viruses have nothing to do with this.
Well, this is a virus. A bacteriophage is a virus.
A phage is a virus.
Yeah.
Okay. I missed that phage of the book.
Yeah.
Get it? Phage.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Okay, so you've raised a lot of capital in Winnipeg. I'm aware of that. Obviously, I'm in Winnipeg. I know what's happening in the capital markets here. So, did you go through the CPC route, or did you created just a private company?
Yep, private company, and we sort of wrapped the company around the technology. And then from there, we did some seed raising and brought on a science team and just continued the science. So right now we have 2 products that are ready to go. And with those 2 products, we are just waiting for regulatory approval. So right now we're just going through the regulatory approval through the government. Once it's approved, our bacteriophage products for chickens will be licensed and ready to go. Now, I know that sounds funny because we're talking about chickens. Now, there's a reason that we are in chickens. So as Cytophage started out, moving into the human health field is very expensive. And as a startup company, even though we had a great product that would kill MRSA and C. difficile and all of those organisms that you find in the hospital, getting into the market was just capital, like the capital you needed was just out of our range. So then what we did really quickly was we shifted because animal products or chickens and pigs in Canada, as of this year, you're no longer allowed to use antibiotics. So because of that issue, farmers were losing half of their crops or half of their chickens. So out of 15,000 chickens, they would lose half of them because they couldn't treat them prophylactically with antibiotics. So we've created a product actually that can be used by these farmers to actually save their livestock and, of course, allow them to be in business still.
How have I not heard about this story? The fact that we can't use antibiotics on animal. I didn't even know that. That's new. That's 2020.
No, it's been going on now for 3 years. They've slowly phased them out after the last 3 years.
So like farmers now cannot use anti whatsoever. Okay, so this is where you step in. The chickens, you got other products as well, llamas, I would imagine, and sheep.
Well, we're doing chickens right now and pigs, and we're also doing humans, but we're doing humans sort of on the side. Now, as we get the technology through the regulatory processes, then the governments will start feeling a little bit more comfortable with us using what we call synthetic bacteriophages. And then they'll allow us hopefully to go into the human field. Because again, if you look at a bacterial infection, if you look at, any type of infection that antibiotics can no longer treat, we're basically a solution for that. And that's a huge thing in the hospitals. But getting through all of the red tape and getting to that point is going to take us a little bit of time.
How much time you figure?
Well, I'm pretty optimistic. So I'm going to say, we can definitely get into human type treatments within the next 12 months. And using, like, the dream for Cytophage, of course, is if we would be similar to antibiotics, where a clinician could either use antibiotics or use our bacteriophage or use both to help people. So that's our main goal in the next, let's say, 10 years. But again, we have to take the little steps to get there first.
Hey, I want to ask you, I'll get back to Cytophage in a bit, but I want to ask you about COVID, because obviously COVID's impacting all of us. First of all, how is it impacting you personally at home?
For me, honestly, the day-to-day hasn't really changed, except going into the lab. We only allow lab staff that have to go into work. All of our executive generally stay at home and do their work from there. So for me, day-to-day, again, I'm still a scientist, so I go to work every day. If not, I just work from home. Again, I think the biggest thing that's changed in my life is I'm getting a lot of phone calls from all of my old colleagues that I used to work with, because I used to work with, again, pandemic response basically from the government. And a lot of them are calling me to come back to work.
Tell me about that. Tell me about your role in the pandemic response team with the government.
Sure. So I used to run a program called the Applied Biosafety Research Program. And what we dealt with was looking at decontamination methodologies. So for COVID, for instance, my program would have sent out a list to all Canadians, basically saying, these are the things that you can use to disinfect your house, your hands, and so on and so forth, just to stop those mistakes from happening when people are mixing chemicals that they shouldn't be together. So that was one aspect. The other aspect is that we look at the actual organism and we test it against the proper protective equipment. So the PPE, let's say. As I'm sure you've been hearing, there's a lot of words about masks and problems with N95s and masks that aren't actually coming certified well enough. So my program, we had a mannequin actually that you would put the mask on it, you'd put COVID on the outside, and if it sucked through, then it wouldn't work. So you can test that very, very, very quickly. In fact, I have a bunch of papers with Ebola on a similar topic. So those were the topics that we would be looking at in the program. The other big thing was diagnostics. So testing. Everybody talks about testing. One of the things that my program was putting together for many different organisms was a lateral flow test. So basically, it's like a pregnancy test. You put a little bit of blood on, a little bit of normal saline, and it pushes it through, and you get a bar, and that bar tells you what type of organism that you're infected with. So my program was working on doing lateral flow tests for let's say, all of the flu-type viruses, all of the hemorrhagic viruses, and all of the gastrointestinal ones. So it would have been giving tests, but yeah.
Okay, so you worked in the pandemic response team. You prepped these solutions. Like, how do you think the pandemic, how do you think you're equivalent? Were we ready for this? Could we have been more ready for this?
I get asked that question a lot.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's kind of what we're all thinking.
No, I understand, and I do get that. I get a question a lot. So, hindsight, of course, we can always plan better. The thing about it is science is a little bit different. The problem with science is that if you're developing a pandemic response plan, you're basically planning something that's going to cost some money, and you have to put money into it. Now, we've all been there. SARS came out. After SARS, everybody said, oh my God, we got to create a vaccine. We got to put a lot of money into this pandemic response in order to, curtail anything that's going to come out again. After a few years, everybody says, oh, okay, well, here's a grant for, another 400,000 for SARS. We're not going to fund that because we're not worried about that. And they move on. And that's what's happened. So we got a little bit complacent with our response, and we're paying for it in that way. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of scientists have left. They've moved on. They went to other places. So we don't really have that robust team that we used to have that could take care of this, in a matter of fact, like just getting it done.
Is that a Canadian-wide team?
Yes. Well, it would be a Canadian-wide team through the provincial government as well as the federal government.
How many people were on that team or that group?
Well, the group is still together. What's missing from the group is the lead scientists, like those scientists that would take on the role of running, let's say, the COVID response. So if I run back and give you an example of my history at the National Microbiology Laboratory and the Ebola vaccine, like the Ebola vaccine wasn't something that the Canadian government decided to say, hey, we're going to make an Ebola vaccine. The scientist that came in was interested in making the Ebola vaccine. His name was Dr. Heinz Feldman. He had a lot of great ideas to do it, and they worked. Because they worked, Canada got all of the accolades for that, which is, again, a wonderful thing. But we don't have those types of scientists right now working at the NML anymore because, again, the face of NML has changed a little bit, and it's more diagnostic related as opposed to basic research, which is understandable.
I'm here with Dr. Stephen Theriault, PhD, Chief Executive Officer, Virologist, and Chief Science Officer of Cytophage. We're chatting COVID. We're chatting pandemic response team. You were just chatting about Ebola virus and your work there. I'm intrigued. Ebola. I remember one day I was sitting in the rookie pit. I don't know how long ago that was, and I remember thinking, is this it? Is Ebola going to change the world? Is this the pandemic that is going to wipe everyone out? And obviously it didn't. Maybe because some of the work you did, I don't know. You guys eventually worked on a vaccine, if I understand correctly.
Yep. Yeah. So the Ebola is it's a lot different than coronavirus. So first off, Ebola can only be transmitted via blood. So then you don't get the contagious rate that you see with COVID. That's a huge difference there. That's why, we're thankful, because Ebola, if we were catching Ebola, 98% of us would be dying rather than, the 2 or 3% of us that are currently.
It's much deadlier, but it's harder to get.
Exactly. Yeah. I teach a course at the university. It's on applied research as well. And this year I got my students for a final exam to look at COVID and look at the movie Contagion. Now, the movie Contagion, that virus in that movie is actually mimicking what a virus known as the Nipah virus. Now, that virus, again, these types of pandemics can happen. And if they do happen, it shows you sort of the relationship between one that's really bad and the one that we currently have, again, which is really bad, but it could be a lot worse. So we are lucky in that sense that its mortality rate isn't higher.
I haven't seen Contagion yet, but I guess that's one I have to do. One I'll have to take a watch. By the way, have you ever played the board game Pandemic?
No.
Really neat. You should try it one time. I play with my kids all the time. My kids love it. It's like a team-based board game where you're trying to kind of rid the world of this pandemic that's kind of having clusters and outbreaks throughout the planet. You talked about testing earlier. So testing for COVID. Why is it so complicated? Why is it so difficult to get mass volumes of testing out? Why can't we just test everyone tomorrow, today? Well,
so first off, testing is done in many different ways. So you have to look at how the virus first off reacts. So what are you actually looking for? Are you looking for, IgG or immunoglobulins that you can test for showing that the person was infected? Or are you trying to do a live viral test? So a lot of people mistake those two. And when you're looking at those types of tests, if you're looking at IgG tests, they take a little longer to produce. And Right now, I would say all of the tests that we've produced thus far, they work. Some of them work, some of them don't work. I think the Spartan box is one of the things that's popping up as, it's something that they thought was going to work, and then it obviously didn't because they've pulled it off the market now. So testing itself, if you're doing the antibody testing, that's the easiest. However, it's very time consuming and it takes a lot of staff. Now,
and there's a difference between the antibodies and testing for the antibodies and testing if you have the active virus, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So if you're testing for the active virus, you can only do that in a level 3 lab. And that will take a super long time and is not beneficial because it doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you somebody has a live virus. So what we would like to get is a test that shows whether people are had the virus or whether they have, a low level of the virus in them without looking at whether or not that virus is there, because then we can do that in a level 2 lab. So you went back to why is testing so hard and why can't we test everybody? First off, we don't have enough staff to test everybody. We don't have enough of the equipment that we would actually require to test everybody very quickly. So they are doing a lot of testing. In fact, they do about 2,000 tests a day of individuals that bring in their
Manitoba.
Sample. Yeah, in Manitoba, I'm guesstimating because I don't know the numbers, but they have the capacity to do 2,000 a day without a problem. That's
at the Chatham Provincial Lab there.
Yeah, and as well as mixing with the NML, as well as other provincial labs that have the capacity. Like even my lab at Cytophage, if we were asked by the province to do testing, we could do up to 2,000 tests a day as well.
You could do 2,000. You guys are level 2 or level 3?
We're level 2, but we can go glove box level 3.
Glove box level 3, and they can do 2,000 at Chatham and 2,000 at MNL. So you could do 6,000 between you three.
Yeah, and again, I'm just throwing out the numbers there. It all depends on the machinery that they have. So the real-time PCR machines are what would give you the most accurate read. You can still use PCR machines, but they won't give you as accurate as a read as a real-time would. But yeah.
So the equipment's tough to get and the labs are tough to get, but it sounds like we got lab capacity in Manitoba at least. Because 6,000 a day, you could do 40,000 or so in a week. You could get through most of the province within a short while. But I guess there's also other things. There's equipment, there's staff. How long does one test take?
Well, you can definitely do an RT-PCR test, or a real-time test in about 4 hours. But again, you have to bring the sample and then process the sample and then do the actual the RT-PCR or the real-time PCR. So you're looking at half a day. If you're looking at testing as well, I don't think Manitoba has any problems with testing. I think the large proportion of the testing problems are coming from rural areas. And the other issue is that we don't want to test everybody. Like if you get a test and then you walk away and you say, well, I'm COVID negative, and then you go to a bar, and then the next day you could be COVID positive. So if we test everybody, that doesn't really do anything. What we really need to do is ensure that people that feel sick get tested, and then from there we can develop an epi study or an epi look at what's happening in Winnipeg.
What about the idea of some sort of stamp or something once you got the antibodies? Is it worth anything given the mutation of the virus, or what's your take on that?
So there's a couple of
passport that says I got the antibodies.
Yeah, well, so right now, and again, I'm looking at the science that's coming out, and there's still a lot of work that has to be done, but it doesn't look like we're producing that many strong reactions to COVID. Now, what I mean by that is, if you look at coronaviruses generally, we have about 4 coronaviruses that are human coronaviruses that sort of come into our population. We're not getting herd immunity to those COVID viruses because our immune responses aren't creating enough antibodies for us to be protective. Now, is that going to happen with this COVID strain? We don't know. If it does, then a vaccine might not work, or it might not be as effective as we would like it to be. So there's a whole bunch of unanswered questions that we still have to ask.
Okay, so I'm going to back up the truck here. First of all, reminder, folks, I'm here with Dr. Stephen Theriault, CEO, Chief Science Officer at Cytophage, virologist, expert apparently, and way more than I am. So you were talking just now about these 4 other COVID viruses that exist out there. We're not reacting to, we're not, what was the word used? We're not developing a reaction to them? We're
not developing a herd vaccination or herd vaccine or herd immunity to them. Sorry.
Are these kind of COVIDs that have existed in the past, or would these be like COVID-18s and 17s and 16s from prior years?
No, not like that. So COVID viruses are bat viruses. We have again, SARS is a COVID virus, MERS, COVID-like. So we've had them come into our populations. Now, SARS and MERS have petered out and sort of disappeared. And they've done that because they're not as contagious as COVID-19 is. So COVID-19 should have petered out. It should have actually petered out like the rest, but we're not seeing that because its R factor is a lot higher. And
its R factor is how quickly it gets transmitted. Yeah.
And how many people it'll transmit to. Okay. Yeah. So, if you're infected and the R factor is, let's say 4, you're going to infect 4 other people.
Okay.
That path for COVID is actually fairly high. And we're still working out the numbers because we're still not sure. But you can tell it's a lot more contagious than SARS and MERS were just by looking at the data that's coming out.
We want to get that R squared to like a 1 or something like that.
Lower than that.
Lower than that.
0.01 would be perfect.
0.01. Yeah. Well, then no one's getting it.
Well, if you do have numbers that go below 0.1, it's just, again, the statistical averages, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So this virus is extremely contagious. We don't really know. What is your take on the number of people? So first of all, the antibodies, and then second of all, are we safe with the antibodies? Once I have the antibodies, am I safe to walk around?
Well,
secondary infections are a real thing, I would imagine.
They definitely are. So you're going to be safe as long as your immune response is going to be protective. So as long as you have antibodies and there's enough of them to get rid of COVID, if you get it again, then you're going to be fine. But what you're going to find is over time, those antibodies are going to go down in your body. And there's going to be a threshold that you no longer will be protective. Now, that's the question that has to be answered now is, are we seeing people who are naturally infected slowly releasing or slowly reducing the amount of antibodies that they have so they're no longer protective? And if that's the case, then herd immunity can happen and people will get reinfected. So there's always the possibility. And the data right now is inconclusive in a lot of ways. Like, we're really not sure because the science that's being done, some of it's, rushed. Some of it's put together so somebody can throw out a paper and get some funding. Unfortunately, that's part of our world. We have to look at that. But we are getting some really good data that's starting to come up that shows us that we might not be on the right track for some of the things that we're thinking about.
How do you balance that, man? I'd be so tempted to say, and I know there's the argument against this would be, you're going to harm people, but I'd be so tempted to say like, can we not just do a ton of data collection right now? And, who cares if it's not perfect? Let's just collect as much as we can and let's move forward based on that data. Like, collect as much as you can in 3 weeks and let's go. Same argument for the vaccine, right? Why can't we pump this thing out in a month or 2, right?
Yep. I agree 100%. Yep. We definitely need that type of push forward. We just need somebody to do that push.
But obviously with a vaccine, we had Dr. Karen Fowler on here, I don't know, about a month ago or so. She's an epidemiologist over at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And she said, there's no way they can get this thing out in 12 months because of the 3 phases that a vaccine must go through. Yeah. Now, President Trump has said, the end of the summer, the end of the year, they're going to have a vaccine. I'm paraphrasing. I believe those were kind of roughly his timelines. What do you think about that? And do you think there's a way that they could potentially get this thing out sooner?
Not safely. No.
Not safely.
No, so vaccines are, again, a vaccine is not a vaccine where if we make a vaccine and it's going to cure you 100%. Vaccines have different type of efficacies on treating humans. And again, humans, we're all different. I always like to look at life as a bell curve. People in the middle are average. People on the outside are really special. People on the backside are, well, maybe not so good because they're going to end up having problems. So if you look at our immune response being that way, we're all going to react differently to vaccines. So how we react is one thing. So when you're looking at the vaccine, if we produce a vaccine and we do shortcuts, there's a lot of problems with shortcutting a vaccine because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you make a mistake and you make a vaccine that causes, let's say, neurological problems in patients, something that happened with H1N1, for instance, and you do it in a wide enough scale that you're basically vaccinating the entire world, you're going to see a problem come up with, again, let's say we have a neurological problem come up, then what you're going to end up having is people not trust the vaccines. They're not going to trust the process. And because they're not going to trust the process, it's just going to throw a wrench into, infectious disease control and vaccine development. We already have a little bit of a wrench from the anti-vaxxers. Again, this is something that, as a scientist and as an infectious disease specialist, vaccines, if we didn't have them, a quarter of our population wouldn't be here right now. And there's a reason that they do work. So there's a story behind that as well. But definitely we need to be careful. We can't throw a vaccine just on the table because we need one. We need to do the proper testing to ensure that we have a very valid vaccine and then start moving forward. Because if we don't, we're going to cause a lot of problems in the future for infectious disease control.
I got a neat shirt at home that's sent to me by one of my infectious disease friends at the University of Ottawa. It says, "Got polio? Me neither. Thanks, vaccines."
Yeah.
And I kind of wear it from time to time because, you know, as part of my work, my charity work that I do with the Canadian CMV Foundation, one of our goals, our ultimate goal is eradication of CMV, which is a congenital birth defect caused by a virus. And we're going to get there by getting a vaccine. So I'm committed to getting that vaccine, but I recognize that this one is priority. We're going to take probably 20 years to get our vaccine, maybe more, maybe less. What would be your kind of guess on a vaccine timeline if you had to guess for the US or for North America, let's call it?
So again, I have a lot of colleagues that are in the field and they're currently looking at vaccine types. There's currently 200 vaccine candidates. And let me be clear, anything is a vaccine candidate. You know, somebody I think put in water. So just to be clear, we might have 200 vaccine candidates, but let's say not all of them are going to be to the par that we want. If we look at the studies that are currently being done, and we look at the studies that have happened for SARS, another coronavirus, it's very unlikely that we'll see a vaccine that will be very effective in less than 18 months. And 18 months is being optimistically fast. So if you see something before 18 months, then I don't know, in my mind, again, there might be something different showing, but in my mind, they've pushed it through the process too quickly.
And that process is very, very important, right? Because you mentioned earlier, once someone doesn't trust the process, if people are getting harmed by the vaccine, you lose the trust in the process. And if you lose the trust in the process, you get 90% of people who take the vaccine instead of 100. And if you get 90%, then you don't have that herd immunity, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It's similar to what happened for H1N1 or swine flu. 1/3 of Canadians took the vaccine and 2/3 did not. So that just shows you right there that, you know, again, H1N1 was a little bit different, or swine flu was a little bit different because it wasn't as well known, but it's still something that you have to look at.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about your work at the World Health Organization. So I know in the past you've worked, I think you were an advisor. Is that the right term?
Yeah, so for Ebola and for the Ebola outbreak in 2014, I was part of the group, the advisory group for that outbreak. And we all dealt with PPE and how to make sure everybody was safe. So
did you, in conjunction with that, did you actually travel a little bit?
Oh yeah. So I was in Geneva for the WHO. I was also out for the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone. So did a lot of work in field, and then again coming back out and working with the WHO to create guidelines to protect the healthcare workers that were actually in the field was very important, because before we started the work, there was, I'm trying to remember the numbers. I think it was 534 healthcare workers that got infected and died from Ebola. Wow. And then after we put forward our protocols, there was less than 10.
The protocol was just protective equipment, and
well, it's how to wear it and how to use it and how to take it off, because again, Ebola is extremely I want to say contagious, but I don't want to confuse people. So if you got one Ebola virus, you would be infected and have Ebola. If you got one coronavirus, you would not be infected. You would need about 1,000 or 10,000 to actually cause the infection, because your immune response is going to kind of knock it out a little bit. But for Ebola, it doesn't work. One virus, you get infected.
What would that term be called? The fact that you only need one versus the fact that it's like the strength of the virus or something like that?
Well, it's contagious. Like it's contagious, meaning it's very easy to get into your blood cells or your cells and then cause an infection.
I was kind of hoping there was a cooler word than contagious.
Yeah. Can't think of one off the top of my head, but if I do, I'll let you know.
Okay, let me ask you about your level of surprise that we're facing this type of pandemic. Would you have, having worked kind of on the pandemic team, are you kind of surprised to see that the damage that's being done globally and the sheer loss of life that's happening?
Yes and no. So, I've been working in this field for many, many years, and it's not a question of if, it's always when. from flus to Nipah viruses to coronaviruses to everything else that we see in our world. We're a growing population and our world doesn't expand with us. So as we all get closer in sneezing and coughing distances from each other, we're going to catch these organisms. Plagues are plagues. So was I surprised? No, but I am surprised that it's gotten this far. And again, it has to do with the virus itself. There's something unique about this virus, and
something that we haven't figured out yet.
Well, I'm not sure if it's about not figuring it out. It's just it's very easy to pass on. And that's the problem, is it's passing on to people very, very quickly. And how it's passing on is, again, one of the things that we still have to work out. We always say 3 feet. It is 3 feet, or sorry, 3 meters within our ourselves should be protective. But, is it even different than that? We actually don't know. So we'll have to see. The other thing that we look at coronaviruses, and you brought this up just a little while ago about it being mutating. Now, coronaviruses don't mutate very much. They have actually a proofreading system. So the likelihood of this virus mutating into something that would be like worse off than what it is extremely unlikely. So that's a good thing. We'll have to see, though. Again, viruses are all different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, I'm here with Dr. Stephen Theriault, PhD, virologist, chief executive officer, chief science officer of Cytophage. I do think that what Dr. Theriault is sharing right now, I think it's extremely important. I would love for you guys to like this, share it, give us a like, give us a comment, let us know what your thoughts are on this. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's not every day you get someone who's, extremely competent, who's knows this stuff cold and is willing to share that information with us. So guys who are watching, and if you're watching this on the replay, please make sure to like it, share. On the bottom there, you see kind of where you can see it. The end of this, what happens over the next 3-6 months? What about, is there going to be a reinfection? Maybe I'll start with that. What are your thoughts on the reinfection or phase or second round or whatever people are calling it?
Yeah. So, I get asked this as well from a lot of people. And if we go back and we rewind, there was 2 paths that we could have taken. We could have went through the herd immunity like Sweden's doing, or we could have done what we're doing now. Because we've went in this path, we're sort of stuck in the path. So as we start to let people out of quarantine, we are going to get reinfected. It's just, it has to happen. If it doesn't happen, then we've either gotten an anti-therapy done, or maybe the sun will help us out and people won't catch it from being in close contact with each other. But it's very likely that we're going to have a second round of infections. Why? Because they've quarantined everybody away. Now, there's also studies coming out, and again, I don't want to say that these studies are valid because I've only looked at reviews from them, but there was one study that came out where they did 3,000 individuals. From those 3,000 individuals, they realized that 35% of them already had antibodies to coronavirus, right, which means that it's already in our population, and all of the stuff we're currently doing is a waste of time. Well, maybe not a waste of time, but we don't need to be this quarantined right now. But that's the whole problem, is we don't have the data. We don't have.
How would you do it though? Like, how would you do it if you don't know?
I would sit at Sobeys with a swab, and every person that walked in would get swabbed until I had 3,000, and then I would do the tests, and you would have your data right there.
For Manitoba or for
Manitoba, yeah.
So what would that do though? Let's say, Dr. Theriault, we find out that 37% of people in Manitoba have the antibodies. Then what?
Then why are we quarantining? Because we're already past herd immunity.
Are we past herd immunity? I thought it was closer to 60-ish%.
Yeah, well, again, 35%. If you open it up, it's going to go quickly.
Okay.
Now, we are going to have people that are going to catch the organism or catch the virus and perish from it. So that's what we're really trying to stop. And the other thing I think we're trying to stop is that we weren't prepared for having so many people getting sick at the same time. Right. So that was another reason that this quarantine does help in a manner. And again, the government moved in that path, so they have to stay in that path. And because they have to stay in that path, we are going to run into tertiary infections for sure.
Yeah, that's the whole idea initially. Like, if everyone gets it at the same time, the hospitals are going to be overwhelmed and people are going to die. And the guy who breaks his leg might die just from infection because nobody's treating him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I feel like we probably took a big dent out of that, I would imagine.
Yeah,
the whole.
Yeah, totally agree with you there as well. Yeah.
Okay, so then how do you see this actually ending? So I asked you, and you said, well, if we knew that, so since you can't have your way and test 3,000 people at Sobeys, by the way, how much would that cost? Why don't we do that? Could you and your lab do that?
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
One day.
You just gave me an idea. I'm going to write a grant and I'm going to put it into Research Manitoba, and I'll see if I can get it done.
To me, that, you spend a day and a half or 2 days, Sobeys or wherever, King's Head or Garage Cafe, wherever, and you swab everyone, you get them, you test them. It's going to take you, what, a day or two to get the data?
Well, it'll take us a few more days because we have to process 3,000 samples.
Right.
The processing, again, is the part that takes a little bit of time, but the testing will only take half a day.
What do you think we're at right now for antibodies in Manitoba?
I don't know. I'm speculating a lot.
Well, this is all speculation, obviously.
Yeah. One of the things I speculate is that January wasn't the first time we saw coronavirus. That's what I'm speculating. Yeah, in US or in Canada. I have a feeling that this has probably started about 6 months earlier and has just gotten sort of to the point where we've noticed it. So again, I'm speculating.
They kind of date viruses now, right? I think I read this somewhere where they're able to date and age how, the tracking the virus and when did it start. And that'd probably be that wouldn't be like a crazy hypothesis, right? That'd probably be in the majority of virologists would agree with you. That it's been going on for 6 months or whatever, and we just didn't know about it. 6 or 7 or 8 months.
I think a lot of people are starting to look at that now. Yeah, because we've found cases of people that have been tested now. So you have a blood test from, let's say, in December.
Oh, yes.
And they'll see that there's coronavirus there. And then they keep on going back. So what that means is that we've already seen coronavirus cases in the US in December, which again is 2 months before anybody really started to do anything, which means that it's in Canada as well, and Mexico for that matter. So again, the study that you just talked about, the 3,000 people in Manitoba, I think that's a really interesting thing to do. And not only do it in Manitoba, but we should do it in every big city in Canada. And then it would give us a very good epi study or epidemiological view of what's going on.
And you'd want 3,000 just for sample size.
Yeah, that's a good number.
And that'd be what, like a $30,000 study?
Let's say 50, just in case.
$50,000 study. Okay.
Yep.
I feel like there's got to be some money for that, especially if someone's willing to do it. Anyways, I'm by no stretch am I an expert in public policy funding for research for this, but I do think of that blood test that you mentioned really reminds me, take me back to CMV. Again, the passion that I have on the side. For these babies that are born, they typically get a dried blood spot at birth.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then when they get the dried blood spot, if the baby eventually develops hearing loss or whatever, and we can maybe attribute it to CMV, they will often test 5-6 years down the line, they'll test the dried blood spot of the baby to see if this baby actually had CMV at birth. And then, now they know what to watch for, et cetera. It's really neat that they're able to do that and preserve those samples for that long.
Yeah, especially.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so this ends in your mind, herd immunity is kind of the only way you see this ending, or I'm interpreting, but I like before vaccine, you think that'll happen, right?
Yeah, well, if our information is correct and we've had infections earlier and we see that we have 35% antibodies already, then I would say herd immunity is already on its way, and we should loosen up the constraints and just start moving forward.
Let me ask you this: let's say you did your study. Let's say you did your study tomorrow, and a week from now you have the data that shows 40% of Manitobans have the antibodies. Do you think things would change, or do you think there's not enough information, like, experts like you? Do you think immediately we would open things up?
No, it doesn't go that fast, and we shouldn't open it up that fast. We should do a few more studies to make sure that everything is valid and showing exactly what we're prescribing in the study itself. So I would say we should do 3 random studies. Let's say pick 3 cities and then 3 random studies in each of those cities, and that would give us the information that we would need, which then you can go to Teresa or Dr. Tam and say, listen, this is the compelling evidence we have in Canada. Here you go, and see what she would do. Again, I've worked with Dr. Tam for many years when I was in the government. She's a very accomplished and competent woman. The only thing sorry?
How is she socially, and what kind of person is she?
She's a very nice lady. She's, again, very competent, very, very good at her job. I've, again, worked with her for many years when I was working in the federal government in Ottawa. I just wish she had a crew of scientists around her that were as good as her. That's the only thing I would say.
Bit of a quiet jab there.
Little
So that's really interesting. Okay, so then if you think it ends by herd immunity, so the vaccine then would only be effectively for kind of like newborns, or this might be part of the other stuff that we vaccinate for at some point in the future. Is that kind of what you see happening?
No, well, probably not. So it depends. So we have flu in our population, and we don't do yearly flu vaccines for our children. I would more assume that coronavirus would be a vaccine that you would get in the later parts of your life, because it's more damaging to elderly people for a lot of reasons. But if I again, I'm not a vaccine person in the sense that I do vaccine policy, but in my mind, we don't need another vaccine at the beginning of life, especially one that's not effective for not affecting children that young.
Right, and I guess you'd kind of lose the antibodies over time, and you'd lose the efficacy of your antibodies, right?
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Okay. You talked a lot about, I'll get back to cytophage here for a bit, because I kind of jumped right over it. And this is an extremely interesting conversation for me. As those of you who could tell, I'm extremely interested in virology and vaccines and public health. I think it's a really, really important topic. So what's next for cytophage? You guys have a revolutionary product that's patented. It's a virus that attacks bacteria. What's the next step? You're going public, or what is there an equity raise? You're going to raise capital here?
So we were going public. Actually, we were supposed to go public this year, and COVID happened. So we decided not to go public because the markets, tanked. I guess you would be fully aware of that.
Yeah, I saw that a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, we have enough money in the bank to keep us going in the science that we're doing. We're again going through the regulatory processes, focusing in on chickens and pigs to develop our products for, and then start selling. One of the interesting things that we've been tackled, or we're trying to tackle, is we've been contacted by a huge chicken farm in Italy, and they have a huge salmonella problem. And we're creating a product that will solve their problems. But as soon as COVID happened, we of course had to stop going there. The good thing about that is the science is going really well. So as we move forward, and as soon as we get regulatory approval, we basically have sales and we can start moving. Cytophage, though, itself is a 3-tiered company. So we deal with animal health, we deal with food safety, and we also deal with human health. So as our pillars are coming together, the animal health is where we're focusing on now, because that's where we can bring in some income. And then food safety, very simple. Again, when you hear on the news about your E. coli infecting your salad or your strawberries, our product can be sprayed on food and kill those contaminating bacteria and still be enjoyed and eaten by you and not cause any problems. So that's, again, a great process. And then human health is personalized medicine. We've had so far about 3 cases of individuals that have contacted us about antimicrobial resistant bacteria that they can't get rid of, and they would like us to create a phage for them. Now, we try to do as many of these as we can. However, again, we're a company and we have to make money. So we're focusing right now on the chicken area. And then as soon as we have that in the bag, we're going to move forward with the human health part. And I'll just throw out one thing. There's, again, a great story. Stephanie Strafty, a doctor from the US who saved her husband using bacteriophage. She started a not-for-profit, which helps connect individuals who have a bacterial problem, or a bacterial problem, with designers of phages. So she's done that, and we're actually going to be doing that in Canada here shortly, and we're going to call it iPath North. So again, it'll be helpful for individuals that have problems that can contact us, and then we can set them up with the best solution to deal with their problem.
That's really cool. Like an Uber for phages.
Exactly. Yep.
What valuation are you guys coming out at for the next? What's the projected valuation?
Oh, geez, I wish I had my CFO here. So our evaluation right now is.
Well, we're not talking $1 or $2 million here. This is going to be like a.
Yeah, it's just shy of $100
million.
Yeah, that's
congrats.
Where we are right now.
Not many people have built $100 million companies, so congratulations for that. And then the listing will be on the venture exchange or on the CSE.
So we were doing TSX and then going to NASDAQ, but now I think it might be NASDAQ first.
Straight to NASDAQ.
Yeah,
everything that's on there just doubles.
Yeah, perfect.
No, that's a bit of a joke, because it is on fire lately. No, the NASDAQ. I do want to take you through a bit of a rapid fire here. A reminder, guys, I'm here with Dr. Stephen Theriault, PhD, Chief Executive Officer, Science Officer, Virologist at Cytophage. He's taken us through a whole bunch of really neat content here, really neat topics. Take a second, share this, like our Facebook page, share with your friends on YouTube, whatever you need to do, whatever all the cool kids are doing with really neat videos. I want to ask you, so I'm going to ask you some questions. You can try to give me 1 or 2 word answers, all right? Or 3 or 4 if you need to. First of all, what was your first science experiment?
Making nitroglycerin.
Obviously, like me, right? Same thing. I was trying to see if a train would roll down a hill and you were making nitroglycerin. How about prizes at school fairs or science fairs? Have you won?
Oh, geez. For me, my science career and my academic career only started when I really went into college. For in high school and stuff, I wasn't really active other than playing basketball. Just to give you a funny side note, I was more in my high school yearbook. I was most likely to be incarcerated. That was in my yearbook. Okay. Not saying that I was a bad kid. I just had a lot of great ideas, and I wasn't challenged in school very much. So let's say I acted out of it.
That's the thing. Like when I was a kid, like I kept doing my older brothers, my older sisters' math, and I kept doing their schoolwork. And then I would show up to that grade and I'd done everything already. And lo and behold, what am I doing? I'm throwing erasers to the person next to me, I just disrupted everything, and I was just troublemaker for no reason. So if you have parents of kids like that, please make sure they're challenged consistently. Your favorite historical figure? One name.
Augustus.
If you could have dinner with anyone on the planet today, alive?
Kate Beckinsale.
Wow, you didn't go like Obama or Michael Jordan or
nope.
Okay. Your favorite movie?
There's a reason for that, though. Very intelligent lady. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Cool. Star Wars.
Okay. Nice. They're all good. Which of the 4 big pro sports leagues will be the first to restart? Basketball, hockey, football, baseball.
Can I say hopefully none? No, I'm just kidding. Basketball. I don't really watch sports all that much.
You do? What's the sport that you do?
I'm a rock climber.
Best place to rock climb in Manitoba?
The TD building on Main Street.
Okay. What else do I have here? Which book are you currently reading on your night table?
Oh, I actually have 2 that I'm currently reading. So have you heard of Robert Jordan? He's a fantasy novelist. They call him the Tolkien of the 20th century.
Okay,
so
yeah.
He wrote a series called The Eye of the World. So I've read his books. I read them every year, and I'm just finishing the last book now. And then from there, I'm also reading and started to read a Patricia Cornwell book, which is Portrait of a Killer, which is the story about Jack the Ripper.
Okay. Do you play Magic: The Gathering?
No, but I play Hearthstone.
Okay. Will the world, you think, in your mind, be better prepared for the next pandemic? Obviously, has to be yes.
Yeah. I hope so. It depends. If our pandemic is in 3 years, then yes. If it's in 10 years, I don't know, because we goofed up from SARS.
It's the crazy that Dr. Fowler said the exact same thing. She's like, we had all this funding in place. We were ready to go. And then it all just fell apart. Yep. We were ready for this. And, okay. So I think that's it for my rapid fire. So thanks for that. Very quickly. So this COVID, Manitoba, I read, I want to try to understand this. Is one of the last questions I'll ask you. I read in the National Post last week, I think it was, how Manitoba was the envy of Canada because we have no cases effectively. We're down to less than 1 per million per day. Why do you think that is? There's a lot of theories around in my friends and family.
Manitoba, we're one major city in a huge province that has been blocked off from every other major city in Canada. So we had cases come in at the beginning, and we saw those cases sort of evolve and go through their process, and we haven't had any come in anymore. Just wait till we start opening it up a little bit, and
Yeah.
I guarantee you we're going to have more cases. Yeah.
When do you think the next day will be where we have 10 individual cases in Manitoba? How far away is that?
Again, we always like to hypothesize. I'm going to say give it 2 weeks. And
2 weeks.
We're going to see an increase in cases if they open things up. Like if things open up, then give it 2 weeks. If people are traveling to Winnipeg again for business, if people are going from, Ontario or Saskatchewan, Alberta, and coming into Manitoba, then yes, we're going to see cases.
The concern is more travel from exterior to interior, not kind of Winnipeggers traveling inside of Winnipeg.
No. Yeah, no, we don't have. Well, as you said, we don't see new cases, so we've petered out. So our population is pretty much good. However, we're going to get infections coming in when people travel.
Okay. Do you follow the stock market much?
My wife does. I don't.
Okay.
I'm very bad at money because I would look at the stock market as gambling, I think.
Okay. I guess you got to own quality companies. I guess I would respectfully disagree with you, Dr. Theriault, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that one. So I'm going to come down to your lab. You're going to test me for coronavirus because I coughed twice in the last couple hours. So you're going to test me for that. And
I heard 6 times, but okay. Yeah.
No. And then you're going to test me for that. And then maybe I'll document it.
Sure.
I'll add it to my YouTube channel. What's that process like? How long do I have to book, and what's it going to cost me? And I know you don't do this for anyone, but
I would need you for less than an hour, and it won't cost you a dime. And then the results would come again within 4 hours. So we can just run the PCR and then we can see. I also have lateral flow tests that we've been working on, so I can give you one of those as well, and it'll give you tests results right away. Can
I take a run at your rock climbing wall as well?
You can. Yep.
I was chatting with Dr. Theriault earlier, and he showed me his rock climbing wall. You are actually an accomplished rock climber. You climb the same cliffs that those crazy guys in the movies climb, right? You climb the Yosemite there, one of the faces.
Yep. Yeah. That's called the Nose, which is one of the famous faces in Yosemite, in one of the mountains there. But yeah, I've been climbing since I was 18. Again, I've been an avid climber in Winnipeg. I've put up about 1,500 climbs in Kenora, and I climb all over the world as much as I can. Although, life is catching up where I'm getting a little bit older, so I'm slowing down and just enjoying being outdoors and climbing easy routes now rather than the hard ones.
I look at that movie. What was it? Free Solo on Netflix, I think it was. Yep. Actually scared me to watch that movie. This guy climbing with no ropes, hanging, a mile above however high he was. It just scared me. So hopefully you're not doing much of that, because we need you to continue to work with your phages and continue to solve the problems that we're going to have in the future. Thank you for your time, Dr. Theriault, Dr. Stephen Theriault, PhD, virologist, chief executive officer, chief science officer of Cytophage, Manitoban. Cytophage, the company, is likely to be going public later this year or next. Roughly $100 million valuation. Congratulations on that. Keep growing it. I love the Manitoba success stories. Every time we can get a Manitoba company on an exchange, to me, that's a huge win. I'm a big homer. I'm a big believer of everything. We do some great work here in our backyard. There's some really good publicly traded companies on the exchange now. We need more. Nice work for that. Guys, if you're not sure who's coming this week, on Thursday, as a reminder, we got Yvan Boisjoli. He's the CEO, Yvan Boisjoli and Steph Menard. So they're two of the founders of Bold Commerce. Not sure if you know that story, Dr. Theriault, but they basically founded a company in their own basement, and it's now a very large company. They sell apps to people who sell on Shopify. They got like offices, and I don't know, I want to say 3-4 cities. They got a ton of employees. They're growing like crazy. Every time I talk to them, they're hiring 100 people. They have hundreds and hundreds of staff. They've grown it like crazy. Bold Commerce, they will be here on Thursday. I'm going to ask them about Shopify as well. Next week, we got Vincenzo Guzzo. He's on, no, that's 2 weeks from today. Sorry. Vincenzo Guzzo, Dragon's Den, from the Dragon's Den, May 25th at 3 p.m. He is a dragon. And then after that, the week after, we got Bruce Croxon. He's CEO of Round 13. He's also an entrepreneur. He's an investor on CBC's Dragon. Then he'll be here on Monday, June 1st. We also have an estate lawyer coming to chat about some of the, a tax lawyer coming to chat about some of the neat things you could do now. with respect to capital gains strip. They took away a lot of the tax advantages. Dr. Theriault was like, I don't care. It's not my
Hey, income splitting screwed me. Don't worry. I get it.
So we're working hard to create any tax advantages for business owners. If you're one of those, you're going to love this. Even if you're not, there's some really neat tax advice that we're getting a tax lawyer on the show. One of my ex-colleagues at MLT Aikens back when I was a lawyer. So that's it for now, guys. Incredibly thankful to Dr. Stephen Theriault for taking the time. I really loved our chat today. Please, guys, give us a like, give us a share, throw us your comments. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, today ends May 11th, 2020. I will see you guys Thursday. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.